Welcome into the Matchday 2 episode for the Champions League. I'm your host, real_G Warner. This is Betting the Pitch, the podcast network. We'll be doing an NFL podcast later today with @A_Schnicker, plus a college football podcast with Big East Ben on the pregame.com network. But this is Betting the Pitch. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. If you're watching on YouTube at the real_G Warner, you can subscribe there. 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify would be hugely useful. But let's get into it. This is Champions League Match Day 2. Going to go through each of the matches on Tuesday and Wednesday, October 1st and 2nd. And try to build on a 1-0 debut start to this season. My best bet on that first Champions League episode was Inter Milan on the road at Manchester City, a 1-goal underdog, a goalless draw. Literally the exact scoreline I was hoping for as I played under as well. Looking for another option or another way to get to 2-0. Also happy to say that my best bet on this Betting the Pitch podcast has won 3 straight. With this weekend pending, as I'm not caught up fully just yet, but looking to try to keep that hot streak going, and what's been really great to the start to the NFL season as well. If you're not a member of my Patreon before I start, patreon.com/real_G Warner, the best spot for all my plays, leans, write-ups, everything across all sports. And I do have comments available. I can show that here. So if you want something or would like me to drill down into something further, please let me know, and I'm happy to do so. So without further ado, let me make sure I have my lines available, and then we'll get right into it. Okay, so we'll start in the Champions League. We have 2 early matches. They kick off in 37 minutes. Sorry, I had internet outage at my home, so I had to find another place to record. But Red Bull Salzburg hosts Stade Brestois, a Austrian side hosting a French one in the first start. Red Bull Salzburg, a half a goal favorite at home. All the juice on Brest right now. Over unders 2 3/4. Juice very heavily to under. Now, Stade Brestois, they I thought were very fortunate to win their opener at home against another Austrian side in Sturm Graz. 2 kind of lucky goals, it felt like, but XG kind of disagreed with me on that take. And then Brest went on the road to Alger and lost 3-0 on Friday, a newly promoted side who's been kind of up and down in French League 1. So not really a great start for I guess last week was not good to Stade Brestois, especially because they had the midweek off. They did play almost the same lineup they're going to play in Champions League today, I suspect. Though I haven't looked at them just yet. I was trying to get this podcast out. But Salzburg on the other side were really poor in their opener. They're a young squad that's like basically a feeder ground for Red Bull Leipzig, and then the rest of the Red Bull kind of network, and really anyone that will buy their players. But they looked really young, fell behind very early to Sparta Prague on the road, and then ended up losing 3-0. So Brest off to a much better start with a victory. Red Bull Salzburg need a result, especially at home in this Swiss league, which then takes the top 8 that automatically go through. But I think both of these teams are just trying to finish in the top 16 to keep their Champions League season going. In terms of where this number has moved, it's been as high as 3/4 of a goal underdog on Stade Brestois. I tend to lean to that side. I just don't know. I mean, I don't want to overreact to a first performance, though. I got to say, I don't follow the Austrian league as heavily. Went to Red Bull Salzburg on the road at Inter last season, coincidentally, and thought they were really competitive there. But I didn't see that in the opener. They've sold off a lot of players, so I'm pretty interested in both the road team and an under 2 3/4 here. I feel like there's some value in not expecting a ton of goals. Plus, Red Bull Salzburg, while they're not the fly forward side they've been in past years under Roger Schmidt and others. Jesse Marsh, the American, who's now head of the helm in Canada's national team. I think there's enough reason for me to have some pause on Stade Brestois, though I feel like they are a hardened Ligue 1 side, and that they end up facing a lot better teams than Salzburg through a lot of their league season. Say what you want about Ligue 1. But I'll put that on the list as half of a goal underdog, though it's very juicy at the moment. Looks like it might even fall to a quarter. At least that's where the number's been trending. And then we'll move next. And I guess I'll also put under 2 3/4 on that list as well. We'll have an ultimate best bet end of show, picking a favorite game on Tuesday and one on Wednesday. So stay tuned and stick around for that. Moving next to VfB Stuttgart hosting Sparta Prague. Currently Stuttgart a 1.5 goal favorite. At home. All the juice on Sparta Prague right now. They're, I guess, consecutive early windows for Sparta Prague. Over under 3 1/4, juice more to the over slightly. Stuttgart, probably couldn't follow up a thrashing of Borussia Dortmund on the road at next week or this past weekend, their next match day. Ended up getting a late draw despite being down to 10 men for a lot of that match. And they were able to draw Wolfsburg on the road. Kind of a shady number. They got a man-centered central defensive midfielder. Carazor sent off, even though he shouldn't have been at all. It was a yellow card, honestly, on Wolfsburg. But there's honestly some weird line movement in that one as well, or just a small line in general on Wolfsburg. So it seemed like the German Bundesliga market was against Stuttgart. Well, now they get a great home match where they're going to possess the ball. That's the possession team that they're called now, but they have a great way to reclaim that ball as well with the high press. I think they deserved a lot better, pretty much played Real Madrid to almost a stalemate in Madrid at the Bernabeu in the first match day. Unfortunately, we're not able to get an equalizer late and ended up conceding to lose 3-1. Brutal for Stuttgart bettors and also for my under in that one as well. But I think Sparta Prague, I mean, they looked really good in their opener, but it was at home. It was their first home match in the Champions League in almost 20 years. So 2 decades without going into a match. I'm sure they're going to be missing that crowd quite a bit, though. When I was in Rome for Sparta Prague, for Slavia Prague, the neighbor and rival, the Czechs are gonna travel really well, I suspect. Big spread here. I don't know that I want to be against Stuttgart, especially after their destruction, demolition, whatever you want to call it, of Borussia Dortmund. I think my biggest interest in this one is just seeing Sparta Prague go on the road because they've been very defensive in a lot of these competitions before, maintained or have the same manager. So my biggest interest there will be in the under 3.25. In that early window. Now we'll move to the big onslaught of games on Tuesday. Arsenal host PSG, probably the standout match of this window. Arsenal a 3/4 goal favorite right now. Almost all the juice on PSG on the road. Over unders 2.5. Juice pretty heavily to over. Now Arsenal, their defense has been awesome. Not much more I can say about that or than that. The big question is against a PSG side that are going to try to possess the ball and try to create opportunities with great offensive players is how well does that Arsenal defense stack up? They conceded twice on the road at Manchester City, though one was late in stoppage time, and they were down to 10 men for an entire second half. I tend to want to be on Arsenal unders forever. I think that's the best way to play those teams because Arsenal kills teams. They win most of their matches or almost all their matches. The big question though is they got to win by multiple goals to take a full unit from a PSG bet here. I am a little concerned about PSG's defense because it doesn't seem to be always so focused, but that's been a problem going back years and years and years. And I feel like without Mbappe, they're at least going to have 11 players trying on defense, it seems to me, unless one of the other PSG youngsters has taken over that mantle. Bradley Barcola, I'm looking at you. But I think my biggest interest in this one is under 2.5. It does feel pretty low for these two teams, but I think PSG are going to contest a lot for possession. Luis Enrique, that's how he managed under the Spanish national team. It's how he manages under PSG as well. And I think that's probably a bigger interest for me is at under 2.5 than the PSG side. Moving next to Bayer Leverkusen hosting AC Milan. Currently Leverkusen a 1-goal favorite. All the juice at Milan on the road. Over unders 3.25. Juice a little bit more to under. Now Leverkusen coming off a gigantic match for the Bundesliga Meisterschale title on the road at Bayern München this past weekend. Milan 2 weekends ago with a big win over Inter, but they got to play Friday while Leverkusen played in the Topspiel on Saturday night. That all pushes and helps in the AC Milan direction. I don't really love big underdogs away from home, I got to say, nor do I love ones that I expect to see goals because Leverkusen have not defended at all this season, and Milan have a very aggressive attacking manager in Pablo Fonseca, who's come in from Lille, formerly of Roma, and other places, of course. I think my biggest interest is getting that full goal of insurance on Milan. It's very juicy at the moment. I would make sure you don't lose that on Tuesday before kickoff. Moving next to Barcelona hosting Young Boys Bern. Currently Barcelona 3-goal favorite. All the juice, or a little bit more juice on Barcelona. Over under is 4.25, just a little bit more heavily to over. And now we've reached the big spreads pretty much for the rest of this Tuesday card. Barcelona, they have a great offense. Don't really trust them to defend much, though I don't know that Young Boys are going to do too much to cause any problems. So probably 4.25 under is my biggest interest in this one, but it's not that close to making the card. I got to say, could see Barcelona going for a big number here, though I expect Young Boys to be as defensive as anyone can be in this Champions League competition. Move next to Slovan Bratislava hosting Manchester City. Two back-to-back road matches, tough for Manchester City going to Newcastle early on Saturday and then having to travel to Bratislava in Slovakia. Total here is 4, juiced very heavily to over. Side is Slovan Bratislava getting 3.25. Gigantic for a home team. I think my interest there is potentially to bet against Manchester City because I just haven't really been in love with their attack, missing Kevin De Bruyne and also losing Rodri for the season. I think that forces them to be a little bit more defensive, though I don't know that they need to be that worried of Slovan Bratislava. So under 4, probably my biggest interest there. Get a little bit more in case Slovan Bratislava don't score, though, of course, if they do score, that's much better for them covering the spread. We'll move now to Inter Milan hosting Crvena Zvezda, the Red Star Belgrade, I guess the Bulgarian, or excuse me, the Serbian version. Inter, a 2-goal favorite. Over under here is 3.25. A little bit more juice on the Red Stars, and pretty heavily juiced to over right now. Looks like it might even trend towards 3.5 before kickoff. Red Star did not look good in their debut. Thought that their home crowd would be a lot stronger. Now they don't have that, and they're going to one of the best clubs in Europe. And honestly, Inter Milan closing a full goal underdog or even a goal and a quarter on the road at Manchester City just shows they're still underrated in the marketplace. I don't want to step in front of an Inter train. They're terrifying to me, and so I will move on to the next. Borussia Dortmund hosts Celtic from Scotland. Borussia Dortmund, a 1-goal favorite with all the juice. Over under 3.25, juice more to the under. Now, Celtic are generally overvalued in these international competitions. I feel like the UK dollar, pound, whatever we call it, goes a lot further than a lot of the other ones or whoever's betting these competitions. And that does make Borussia Dortmund potentially have a little bit of value until you consider their defensive performances at home against Bochum on Friday and then past weekend as well at Stuttgart. And that's been a big problem for them, except in Champions League play. Now, Borussia Dortmund, I feel like they play a lot more defense because they're not trying to win every match 3-0 or nope. It's really hard to explain why their defense against weaker competition is a lot worse in the Bundesliga, but I think it's a style strategy, and I feel like their bad defensive performances of late will force them into a more defensive setup. Dortmund scored 3 late goals in the opener to somehow push what looked like a guaranteed winner on under and in Bruges. Now they're at home in a really tough place to play. And Celtic, they don't play the Ange ball anymore, thank God, because that's just stupid, unfortunately, to put it that bluntly. But I like under 3.25 best in that matchup. Moving next up, PSV Eindhoven. This is our last match of Tuesday before we get to the ultimate best bet selection for Tuesday. Stick around for the Wednesday card and Wednesday, and then summing it all up end of show to try to improve on 1-0 in Champions League and 3-0 last 3. But PSV Eindhoven, a quarter goal underdog at home. Pretty big move right now. Hadn't seen, I think Sporting Lisboa, the visitor here from Portugal, Sporting Clube de Portugal. They were a pick 'em initially with more juice than the home team. And since then, a lot of money's been coming in on Sporting Lisboa. I wonder what exactly happened. Going to certainly look into lineups on that one as we got a few hours until kickoff. But I am pretty interested in Eindhoven, great Dutch crowds, and I see no reason to not believe that will occur here either. But I also think I'm interested in the under 3 in this matchup. Sporting took a 1-0 lead, got a red card, sent off Lille player in the first half, but only were able to add a second goal. I think there's some questions for me about just Sporting, or just really Portuguese La Liga Portugal and how they perform in Champions League on a goal scoring front. They're always good. They're known for upsets, of course, knocking out Juventus in recent years and Arsenal last season. But my biggest question is how often they can score goals, and I'm not sure they're going to be able to score enough in this matchup. For my best bet from Tuesday for the Champions League episode, I'm going to go with that full goal of insurance on Milan on the road at Leverkusen. Probably see a high scoring match, but I don't think Leverkusen trusts themselves even with a 2-goal lead. So we'll see if Milan can hang in around that number, maybe get a result to possibly even steal a win in front of D Work's self crowd. Moving to Wednesday, we'll start with Shakhtar Donetsk hosting Atalanta, but hosting is in quotes because Shakhtar Donetsk will not play any home matches as Ukraine is still a war-torn country and there will be no home games. I think this one will be in Hamburg or somewhere in Germany, most likely, maybe in Poland or in Prague, some neutral venue, which really unfortunately hurts the Ukrainian chances. They're used to playing on the road, but this is going to be tough. Atalanta come in, they're a 3-quarter goal favorite with more juice, over unders 2.75, juice more to the under. I think Atalanta have shown a little bit more defense than I think anyone would have expected from them this season. The big question, though, are they is Shakhtar Donetsk? I think they're going to set to try to counterattack, but they really missed Mihajlo Mudryk, who'd moved to Chelsea. It deserved, and honestly was a huge reason why they were so competitive for years and years and years. Seems like they're going to be in this Champions League competition for a while, which is good for the league, good for the country. But the big question is, can they keep Atalanta quiet? I'm not sure they can. I think my biggest interest, if I had to pick something, is under 2.75 in this Shakhtar Donetsk and Atalanta opener on Wednesday. Other in the early window is Girona hosting Feyenoord. Girona coming off a really tough loss on the road at PSG, late goal after their goalkeeper made so many great plays and then make a big blunder at the end. Feyenoord, on the other hand, got smoked by Bayer Leverkusen, started ugly and kind of finished ugly. Feyenoord a half a goal underdog away from home, a little bit more juice. Over under is 2.75, juiced all the way to the over. Might get a 3 in this one. Girona look like they're really struggling handling Champions League and La Liga play, plus the amount of fixtures Spain has played so far to start the season. Maybe the blood money or oil money or combo of blood and oil from Saudi Arabia has forced the hand to start that season a lot quicker. And I guess they'll probably be taking a weekend off for the Super Copa in Saudi Arabia, just because that's, I guess, another city of the Spanish crown. With that said, I think Feyenoord didn't look good enough for me to want to back them. I still feel like Santi Jimenez, the really famous Mexican striker who does very well in Feyenoord in the Eredivisie, but does not do great outside of Rotterdam, honestly, and hasn't really performed much for the national team. I think my biggest interest here is under 2.75. I think it's going to get to 3, so I'd wait on that number. You got plus odds right now on the under there, so should get 3, and that probably be my biggest interest in that matchup. Moving to the big window, Liverpool hosts Bologna. Currently, Liverpool a 2-goal favorite at home. Juice is split both ways. Over under is 3.25. Juice slightly to the under. Bologna, they brought in they were a defensive team that made it to Champions League kind of unexpectedly, to say the least. They replaced their defensive manager and a lot of their good talent that left. They replaced with an offensive manager who has not been great. Got a huge win, like at the death from outside the box, very low XG shot for the first win. There are problems for Bologna. I think that it's going to be a hard season anyway if they kept all their players. So big questions on them. I think they're going to go on the road and try to defend like crazy at Anfield. And Liverpool, I just haven't really been that effective to me offensively. I think their possession style is better for protecting their defense. And I think their offense is not, I mean, it's incredible. They did so well and were so efficient against Bournemouth a couple weekends ago. But I think they're going to have trouble scoring this year, at least compared to expectations. So I'll go under 3.25 in that matchup. Moving next to Aston Villa hosting Bayern Munchen. Maybe this one's the biggest names values, I guess, on Wednesday's card. But Aston Villa, a 3/4 goal underdog at home, a little bit more juice. Over under is 3.25, juice pretty heavily to under. Hard to see unders making sense in Bayern Munchen matches, though Unai Emery certainly is going to play defensively. We've seen that from Aston Villa, and they play really, really great defense at home as well. I don't know why their high line works so much better there than it does away from home, but it's very easy to split anywhere outside of Birmingham. I think my interest in this one is certainly the home dog. Villa have proven that they can play really good teams well at home. Had last season beat Manchester City and Arsenal in the same week within a few days of each other. And I guess I lean to under 3.25. Number feels small for Bayern Munchen, especially in a Champions League match, but I do think that there's some exploitability from Bayern Munchen, as I don't really trust Vincent Kompany, and I feel like their defense is pretty scary at times, which is not great for under. But I think Aston Villa are going to try their best to keep this a low-scoring match that they've had a lot of success with in their building. Moving next to Benfica hosting Atletico Madrid. Currently, Benfica a 1/4 goal underdog at home with all the juice. Over under is 2.5. Juice a little bit more to over. Benfica with a good start away from home. They had a really horrible campaign in Champions League last season, but got off to a much better start. Now they host Atletico Madrid, who have really struggled away from home for years now, partly because they were so dominant at home, but unfortunately, things have changed a little bit since then. I think from just a general perspective with kind of how to handle this matchup, I think it's a Portuguese team, but they're going to be, I think, now that they don't have Roger Schmidt, thank God. I think Bruno Lage, who had been a manager for Wolverhampton Wanderers, is back and really celebrated their first victory, I believe, on the road at Red Star Belgrade. Now they get Atleti at home. Great chance for them to get a result and potentially even win this matchup. I really like Benfica getting that 1/4 goal, and I like under 2.5 as well. Just don't really see a lot of goals from Atleti anywhere right now with a lot of new players. Moving next to the east side of Germany, Red Bull Leipzig are hosting Juventus. Currently, Leipzig a quarter goal favorite at home. All the juice on Juve on the road. Over under is 2.5, and a juice slightly more to under. Leipzig got off to a great start this weekend in Bundesliga play. Finally scored a couple goals off of the head and foot of Benjamin Šeško. But there's still a lot of questions about Leipzig scoring goals, and they're not as dominant at home as they used to be. Juve on the other side started off with some low XG, high goal scoring efficiencies in their first couple of victories, but have had a lot of nil-nils so far this season. And Thiago Motta, the former Bologna manager, who I spoke highly of their defense earlier, was only going to improve a great Juve defense this season. I think as an underdog on the road, that's too much for me. For even though Leipzig's been so good at home, we saw them capitulate late against Atletico Madrid away from home. Certainly different scenario here with the energy building as opposed to waning at the end of a match away from home versus at home. I think Juve have done too much to deserve to be an underdog here. I like the idea that they go on the road and get a result. So I like that quarter of a goal. Also like under 2.5. Moving next to Dinamo Zagreb hosting Monaco. Monaco was probably one of the best wins of Champions League match day one with their home upset victory over a red-carded 10-man Barcelona side, but we'll push that to the side. Dinamo Zagreb from Croatia, three-quarter goal underdog at home, more juice on Monaco away from home. Over-unders 2 3/4. She's pretty heavily to over. Monaco are an over team, and they are much better away from home, I feel like, because they don't have much of a home crowd advantage at all at the Stade Louis II. I don't really know that there's much that I want to get involved in here, at least not until Dinamo Zagreb are a full goal underdog at home. Moving next to Lille hosting Real Madrid. Currently Lille a 1 goal underdog at home with almost all the juice. Over-unders 2 3/4, and it is juiced pretty heavily to over. I'll be waiting to see this one hit 3. I'm still a believer that Real Madrid's defense is just not really going to face much firepower in a lot of these competitions. Certainly don't know exactly the status of Kylian Mbappe for this matchup, but my biggest interest, I think I like the Lille, the full goal of insurance at home. That's important. Though I don't know that's enough for me to want to. Maybe this will hit 1 1/4, though the juice certainly doesn't look like it's pointing that direction. But under 2 3/4 seems very interesting to me, especially if we can get a climb to 3 before kickoff, which I think we will have based on the juice right now. Last but not least, Sturm Graz hosts Club Bruges. Currently, Sturm Graz, I pick them at home, all the juice on Bruges away from home. Over-unders 2 3/4, juice more to the under. Sturm Graz, Austrians, I thought played very well at Stade Brestois in Normandy, I believe, or at least the western side of France. But were very naive, had some very physical tackles, took cards, and of course got a red card and got a player sent off. That seems to be like, besides Parma and Serie A in Italy, that seems like a lower type of European league, stepping up to bigger competitions. You really can't do that, but sometimes the kids will be kids, I guess, or younger players, or less experienced ones will be less experienced ones. Bruges on the other side, I feel like they didn't do much in a Dortmund match besides defend. They did great until falling apart late, and Jamie Kittens was the big reason for that, plus a late penalty, which is absolutely fraudulent, ridiculous, and should be exonerated from the record. I guess I'll take a push, though. It's certainly better than a late last kick of the match penalty kick loss. I think Sturm Graz is my interest here. I'm waiting to see them climb to an underdog, getting a quarter of a goal. I don't know that I want to back them at pick'em because I don't think they'll just become veterans of the Champions League overnight. But Bruges, I mean, they are talented, but are a Belgian team that have some players that still remain from a deep knockout round run a couple Champions League seasons ago. But I think there's still a lot to prove there. Maybe my biggest interest in this one, besides the home team, is actually in that under 2 3/4. So we've come to the end of the episode. I want to get this out as quickly as possible, especially with Champions League coming up. Thank you for who's watching live. If you got something you want to throw in, you're perfectly able to. I want to thank my recent Patreon subscribers, Zachary Cyber and also Lan Zhang. Thank you so much. Patreon.com/real_G Warner. Best spot for all my plays, leans, write-ups. You got Major League Baseball playoffs starting in a few hours. Plenty of picks on there. Of course, the NFL has been really hot to start the season. And of course, college football and every other sport you can think of, all available. Patreon.com/real_G Warner. It's time for the ultimate best bet, though. Before we get in there, if you are a member, I guess you already did Patreon, but if you're Listen to this podcast wherever you're getting it. If it's Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, if you could subscribe and leave a 5-star review, it's huge for the search rankings and gets more people, more eyeballs on, and that will then get me more reason to do more episodes and hopefully a little bit sooner than I'm currently recording as the matches kick off in 14 minutes. Also, if you're on YouTube at @the_real_G Warner, and then this ultimate best bet little 1 minute reel will be on everywhere I can put it, but YouTube at @the_real_G Warner on the shorts portion, and also on Instagram at @the_real_G Warner under reels. I think it's time for me to I guess I haven't said my Wednesday best bet, and that'll be Juventus under 2.5 on the road at Leipzig. And I'll add that to my system, and then I'll get ready, and it's time to record. Hey, this is @the_real_G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. This is the ultimate best bet for betting the pitch Champions League Match Day 2 edition. Went through every match on the Champions League card across Tuesday and Wednesday. I pick a best bet from Tuesday, one from Wednesday, and then make that ultimate best bet, the one you graded me on. Went 1-0 to start this Champions League season on Inter Milan on the road at Manchester City. Have won my last 3 recorded best bets on this channel. So stick around. Maybe we get to 4-0 and 2-0. Hopefully we do. From Tuesday, my best bet will be AC Milan getting a full goal of insurance on the road at Bayer Leverkusen. And on Wednesday, like Juventus under 2.5 goals on the road at Red Bull Leipzig. But of course, check out my Patreon, patreon.com/real_G Warner for all my plays, leans, write-ups across all sports. For my best bet in this episode, I'm going with Juventus under 2.5 goals. I think we see a very low scoring game out in East Germany, and I don't really trust Red Bull Leipzig to score much. So I also like that Juve side as well. And that'll do it for this episode. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll try to get some more episodes. We've got a college football coming out today, pro football tonight, and we'll see you all and talk to you all very, very soon.